Good morning, friends. Madam Sujata Mehta, Secretary MNER, Excellency Dr. Zenith, Ambassador of Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Ambassador Jayant Prasad, Director General IDSA, Dr. Subir Gokul, Senior Fellow and Director Research, Brookings, India, Mr. Arun Sahu, Joint Secretary DPA2, Dr. Praveen Kumar, CII, Dr. Ruchita Berry, Senior Research Associate and Coordinator, Africa UN Lex Center at IDSA. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. I feel extremely delighted in welcoming you all in this important event of the Conference on India-Africa Partnership Future Directions. At the outset, I would like to apologize for preponing this meeting from 10:30 to 10. I'm extremely thankful to Mr. Sujata Mehta for kindly accepting our last-minute request for change of time, and also to the Excellency Ambassador. Friends, we are back with our closing conference. As you may recall, almost a month back, we all met here in Habitat Center to discuss broad issues that India-Africa Forum Summit may like to address. Some of us have put our research together in last 1 month. A sort of network emerged, and we have done some field work, and also we had a consultation in Hyderabad where not only we had participants from India, but also several African delegates came, and we discussed several issues related to agriculture sector. And we are back here in a couple of minutes. Some of our work from the 3 institutions would be launched here by the Secretary. RIS, IDSA and Brookings India have partnered with CII in terms of highlighting the broad areas of engagement with Africa, also trying to bring out key issues that have emerged out of IFS 1 in New Delhi and IFS 2 in Addis in 2011. Now, this week itself, we would have the trade ministers meeting, and then the full summit would be in full swing. We have also tried to bring together broad areas of interest that are to be addressed, not only through India's own growing economy and the agenda emanating out of that, but also from Vision 2063 that African Union has placed up front in terms of ensuring and putting on table the ideas related to Africa's resurgence, the African perspective on education, health, capacity building, and sustainable development. Against this backdrop, India would have to consider a consolidation of its development engagement with the African continent. In the process, the major focus will be on broad 5 areas. Some of that we classify as a sort of theory of development compact, where trade and investment, issues related to technology, capacity building, lines of credit, concessional finance, etc., all fall in one category. The idea is to bring out a composite approach, which is extremely important, trying to respond to Agenda 2063. Since these engagements have happened through the Indian missions based in different countries, the approach is largely bringing in our missions in a major focus. The idea is also to bring out key issues that are important in terms of the different modalities, including lines of credit and capacity building that we consider as extremely important. On the lines of this, we have thought of this day trying to address issues related to geostrategic linkages that India and Africa partnership should address, trade and investment related issues, and then finally the sectoral perspectives, trying to bring out health, pharmaceuticals, and other important areas of India-Africa engagement. Once again, I welcome you all. We look forward to interesting and fruitful discussions leading towards emergence of a concrete plan of action for strengthening and deepening India-Africa Development Cooperation Partnership. As you may recall, in the previous conference, we had discussed this idea of India-Africa Think Tank Network at the ICWA conference last week. This idea was again explored, and there is great potential in terms of not only connecting at the time of the summits, but also between the period, we can do some joint research and bring out the key nuances of this engagement. With support and guidance from RIS Chairman Ambassador Shyam Saran and Secretary MNER Ms. Sujata Mehta, we have called out a couple of development partnership cases in form of a book which is edited by Mr. Mahesh Sharma and Mr. Manish Chand. We would also like to have a book from released from IDSA, which Dr. Ruchita Berry has edited. And then there is an excellent publication, very thought-provoking output from Brookings India. FIDC has been the Forum for Indian Development Cooperation, which has tried to put out this publication together. Joint Secretary Mr. Sahu has been extremely supportive when we prepared for this volume. I'm extremely thankful to him. Some of the civil society organizations have also contributed to this volume. We have Development Alternatives, RIA, Kurtz International, BHAIL, and some other institutions from public sector enterprises, including some of our missions in Africa who have also supported us in bringing this out in a record time. With these words of welcome, I would now request DG IDSA, Ambassador Jayant Prasad, to lead us through this morning. This is the first public event that I expect after you took over as DG IDSA. So a warm welcome to academic fraternity. Thank you.
Good morning. I'll begin by thanking our partners, Brookings India, RIS and CII, and all of you participants, because in Delhi it's a rarity that participants should show up half an hour before the beginning of the program. And so we were able to start off early because Ms. Sujata Mehta has to leave for another engagement. In looking at the future directions of the India-Africa partnership, there is always a temptation to glance at the past, if only because we have had an inheritance to be really proud of. We were linked through our freedom struggle, through the anti-apartheid movement, and non-aligned and South-South solidarity. We have a preset bank of goodwill from which we can draw credit quite easily. But meanwhile, the world has changed, and so have India and Africa. The 19th century might well have belonged to Europe, the 20th century to America. The 21st century has started with the rise of Asia and now the resurgence of Africa, which is becoming a hub of trade, transportation, energy, and minerals. And unlike what we had in the last quarter of the 19th century, when, to borrow a phrase from Dadabhai Naoroji, Indians were reduced to being hewers of wood and drawers of water, and so was the fate of Africa after India. This is not going to be the case in the future, because the future is going to be decided now by the African countries themselves. India and Africa have common challenges. Foremost among them are two: that of nation building and of bringing the fruits of development to the ordinary people. The challenges of uneven development, of poverty, and of unshackling the economy and entrepreneurship of the peoples. Both India and Africa have other commonalities. We are both diverse, we have both seen uneven growth and development, and both have a growing aspirational young population. And we can learn from each other, and most of all because India became free a little bit before the African countries did. The African countries can learn from the many mistakes that we have made through our development process and not repeat them. India's present engagement in Africa is one that is growing. We have over 70 billion of two-way trade, almost 35 billion of investments, 58% of the $12 billion of lines of credit that India has extended in the past 10 years have gone to African countries. And most of India's peacekeepers are deployed on the African continent. What could be the future directions of the focal areas of our interaction? And to my mind, They could be perhaps 4, maybe more. One obvious one through which India has lived through is food security and agricultural cooperation. And here there are lessons. The lessons are of getting the right extension services, having input support for fertilizers and seed, some price support for staples, and credit availability for the farmers, and irrigation wherever it's possible. And this is a combination that can produce a green revolution easily and provide food security. And we have ample scope in our agricultural universities, both to train farmers and experts in India and to set up similar institutions in Africa. The other is energy, an obvious area of cooperation and a growing one. And then the ICT, communication technologies. We already have the experience of a digital connect with India, the e-health initiative, and many more. And we can innovate in this area and build further connectivity. And finally, the most important one of all, which we have seen through practice in our development partnerships in the neighborhood, is the aspect of institution building, both in terms of human resource development, but also by training the trainers, by training professionals in the same institutions where Indian public servants are trained, and also setting up similar facilities wherever possible. And all these would be underpinned, we expect, by a more committed, mutually beneficial engagement. There are whole days of deliberations on these future directions ahead of us, and we will have an opportunity to address it also in the valedictory session. I now have the pleasure to ask Ms. Sujata Mehta for her remarks before she has to leave. I thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
hello.
The distinguished Director General of the IDS, to whom we take greet in the new incarnation, Dr. Kokan, Professor Chaturvedi, Madam Ambassador, Ms. Berry, Dr. Berry, Mr. Kumar, and my dear colleague Arun Sahu, distinguished guests, among whom I see several senior colleagues, and I'm grateful to them for being here. I have to begin with expressing my very deep appreciation for letting me hustle you into coming 30 minutes earlier. This was meant to have been a leisurely start at 10:30, instead of which we're starting exactly at 10. So I thank you very much for that. I think in the last several weeks there have been so very many events, colloquia, symposia and the like on India's relationship with Africa and the huge potential for that, that one might almost think we are reaching saturation point. But that is not actually so, because I believe there are new insights, new approaches and new conclusions emerging from each of these. So I'm very grateful to be here for this event. As a prelude to the summit itself, which starts next week, I think this is a good moment to assess the experience of implementing the different aspects of our bilateral partnership with Africa. The decision proposed by the African Union, which India very willingly endorsed and took forward to become strategic partners, was institutionalized through the format of the India-Africa Forum Summit in 2008. The objective of the IAFS was very simple and very logical: to lay the foundation for a new architecture that could provide for structured engagement, interaction and cooperation between India and partners in Africa in the 21st century, and to provide a platform for engagement at the continental, regional, sub-regional and bilateral levels. I believe this is an important point because for any of us to regard Africa as a single undifferentiated entity would be a huge error of judgment. I think we have to recognize that there are particularities, there are specificities, and we have to be aware of and respond to those. In developing a holistic framework for cooperation, our approach has been that development plays a central role. And if I may use a somewhat archaic term, all estates have a role to play in this. The state, the private sector, media, civil society, all aspects, all are actors in this process. Speaking to the governmental interaction, the channel of the government's development partnership with Africa, with countries in Africa, has been multidimensional. In recent years, in the first 15 years or so of this century, we have used, or we have engaged through grant assistance, through capacity building and technical cooperation, and through utilizing concessional credit facilities. And I think this would probably be acknowledged universally that the technical cooperation and capacity building aspect has been the one that has been, in a sense, the most economical and which has had the greatest impact in terms of strengthening bilateral ties, but also at creating a huge web of individual relationships and interaction, which would have, to my mind, a huge multiplier effect. I think this is something that we cannot overstate the importance of. In terms of capacity building, in the last 3 years alone, or 4 years, we have offered approximately 25,000 scholarships for African trainees. They have been in a variety of disciplines and for a variety of time spans. Some have been as small as perhaps 6 weeks, others have been 9 months, a year. And in pursuing these, we have used government institutions, we have used civil society organizations, research institutions, the corporate sector, the media. So again, all possible channels have been utilized in pursuing these activities. And as I said a minute ago, I think this has been a very worthy effort and one to which we continue to attach great importance. It is also a very economical effort, but with huge multiplier benefits. In terms of concessional credit, we have earmarked approximately $7.4 billion in the period since the last India-Africa Forum Summit, the second one. And through these, we are pursuing projects at this point in 41 countries. Now, numerous challenges have arisen in utilizing this particular modality, but there's an ongoing effort to address those and to improve upon the processes that we follow. In overall terms, in our view, the instrumentality has been useful, and there have been successful outcomes, particularly in terms of building community infrastructure, such as water, public health, power projects, and so forth. I highlight this because this also has implications for the manner in which we approach development partnership as an area of activity. We have engaged in the development partnership, as we now call it, area of work since our very early years post-independence. the effort has transformed over time. It has been, in a sense, almost a dialogue that has been ongoing between India and the countries with whom we engage in these activities, with inputs, sometimes in the form of very trenchant criticism from scholars and analysts. We are aware of that, we recognize that, and we try to improve our processes. But I would like to say that our development cooperation effort has been much analyzed, much discussed and argued over. The fundamental basis, though, on which we approach these are, I think, worthy of repetition. What we do is clearly solidarity-based. What we do is not born of an obligation, except a moral obligation that we feel. It is not mandatory. It is not a requirement imposed on us. What we do is only because we feel we have something to share with other developing countries like us. What we do is non-prescriptive. It does not come with normative overlays of any kind. And it is a response to a requirement that is expressed to us. So in all ways, we see it as a genuinely participatory and partnership-based effort, rather than an activity which is one through which we have boxes to check, so to speak. And I do believe that that is an important reason for the way in which we do things, and I would like to believe for the manner in which what we do is received. There is a certain mutuality of benefit. Of course there is. But it is, to my mind, not driven by, if I may use a phrase which is current in this area of activity, it is not necessarily conforming to what are called mutual accountability frameworks and so on, because there is a whole academic debate about those issues. What we do is not within that framework. It is really born of our bilateral ties, our regional ties, and the interests of the countries with whom we partner. I would also like to make, in closing, a final point. It is often said that what we do is not as efficient, does not have the same profile, does not provide the same, if I may use the phrase, bang for the buck that other partnerships have. To that I would respond that unlike a state-centric model, which would be based on resource extraction and the creation of a pertinent infrastructure, our presence in Africa, our outreach to Africa, are marked by a more diverse and a more mediated approach through a much broader range of stakeholders on all sides. With those remarks, I would like to thank you again for your attention and to thank you for being here. Thank you.
I now have the pleasure to give the floor to Her Excellency Janet Sebaid, Ambassador of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia to India and the Dean of the African Diplomatic Corps.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Secretary, dignitaries from the dais, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, Namaste. At the outset, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers for inviting me to give my view in this conference about India-Africa Partnership Future Directions, where today India and Africa relation is discussed as a run-up activity on the upcoming India-Africa Summit 3. Ladies and gentlemen, the emergence of Africa as a new growing region in the world with abundant material and natural resources, including vast areas of land suitable for agriculture. Moreover, the GDP growth on the average of 5.5 has attracted many players, many countries, for a closer economic cooperation with Africa. This is, this is happening in the last 2 decades, despite the fact that Africa has been dismissed as a failed continent or a dark continent and so on. This is a very pleasant fact for us Africans. Countries like China, Brazil, South Korea, Turkey, and India have lately, in the last decade or two, have created cooperative platforms such as TICAD, FOCAC, China-Africa, and since 2008, India-Africa Forum Summit. However, India-Africa relationship did not start in 2008. Our relationship has started, centuries ago. But the focus on India-Africa started, I think, in 2003, when India crafted Focus Africa program, which is the precursor of India-Africa Forum Summit. The platforms that I mentioned have enabled the continent to deal with the various countries in the areas of interest. As the chairman said that Africa has taken its fate in its own hands today. So what we deal with these countries is in the platform where there is mutual interest, win-win situation, and so on and so forth. Africa's relation with countries emphasize the principle of mutual respect and benefit, where both Africa and the countries that cooperate with have a genuine partnership and a true sense of solidarity in tackling each other's challenges. In this regard, the last 2 India-Africa Forum Summit held in 2008 in New Delhi and 2011 in Addis Ababa have demonstrated that India's policy is largely based on mutual benefit, equality, and complementarity. I wouldn't agree more with Madam Sujata when she emphasized that India does not prescribe any medicine for our problems. The last 2 India-Africa Forum Summit has created a platform where both articulated our cooperation that were expressed in terms of peace and security, trade and investment, lines of credit, technology transfer, most importantly in human resource development. I say most importantly because this is, human resource development is a key for any kind of development, be it economic, IT, and so on and so forth. So in this line, India surpasses all other countries in providing human resource development, and in various sectors, and also with the various durations as alluded by Madam Sujata. Many projects that were initiated in the 2 summits either have been implemented to the development of Africa or are in the process of implementation. There are about 140 projects which are running under the concession and loan, which is being implemented, where India gave to the tune of $7-something billion, in soft loan. This is a very important thing for us to develop our economy, our infrastructure, and so on. As the Forum Summit, of course, as the Forum Summit deals with Africa at 3 levels, continental, regional, and bilateral levels, some of the projects are delayed because of lack of implementation in all these, at all these levels. Maybe in the future we'll have to look into that so that whatever projects could be implemented at the time that they are scheduled for. Ladies and gentlemen, the next India-Africa Forum Summit, as Madam Sucheta said, that we have to learn from our past and also look forward to the future, would be the time where the world and Africa as a whole have crafted our future. We have crafted goals. The world, as expressed in the UN meeting last September, has come up with Sustainable Development Goal as a follow-up of Millennium Development Goal. These Sustainable Development Goals, 17 of them, are closely related to Africa and other developing countries like India too. Now, some of the goals that has to be implemented in 2030 are ending poverty, improving nutrition, promoting sustainable agriculture and food security, and so on. So these are the areas where Africa and India can collaborate, because these areas also, affect both of us. Moreover, there is also a vision of 2063, a vision that is crafted by the African continent. After evaluating its 50 years of journey in fighting slavery, colonialism, apartheid, and other cruelties that faced the continent, Africa Union has set a vision of 2063, where its leaders have pledged to eradicate poverty in 1 generation and build a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development, establishing an Africa of good governance, so that we'll not talk about peace and security in the future. If there is good governance and democracy, I'm sure all these conflicts will be eradicated. So, and so on. So African people have a high standard of living and quality of life, sound health and well-being, well-educated citizens, skilled technology development, and so on. So these are a very formidable challenges for Africa, and we have to meet them. We have to eradicate them in the next 50 years. So we have a very close ally and friend, India, which has all the capacity, because India, as an emerging power, can play an important role in advancing both the Sustainable Development Goals and Vision 23 through its multifaceted India-Africa relations. This is our hope, that in the next summit, we'll look into these challenges and into these goals that has been set by the United Nations and Africa as well, so that we can both collaborate in meeting these goals. So we hope that this will be the direction, I hope. Furthermore, our trade and economic ties may need to be explored. Of course, there is a vibrant trade going on, and the trade value has increased from time to time. But we believe that there should be a very proactive engagement and involvement from the Indian side to encourage the private sector, the private businesses, so that they would do more business, more value addition in our respective countries. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, what has been missing so far in the first two, which I hope we want to see in the third, would be people-to-people relationship. The people of India and the people of Africa are 1/3 of the mankind today, and both of them are young. And we have suffered together exploitation, injustice during colonial period, during the apartheid period, and also we have fought together for freedom from colonialism and so on and so forth. Now, recently, we are also working to develop our our socio-economic problems. However, there is lack of awareness about each other, more so about Africa in India than India in Africa. India in Africa today, India is being recognized even in the rural areas by the people because of Bollywood and because of Indian businesses' involvement in the infrastructure, road building, and so on. However, Africa's recognition, awareness about Africa in India, we feel is lacking. Let me give you a scenario. Wherever I go, whenever I tell them I'm from Ethiopia, they ask me, is it in South Africa or is it Nigeria? So Africa is not only South Africa and Nigeria. Africa is 54 countries. Africa is diverse. Africa is many. So I believe that there should be a forum, not only a forum, a proactive engagement between Africa and India where positive perception is given about Africa in India. So this is my hope, and also the hope of many of my colleagues here, because sometimes Africans here, even when they come for the training, for education and so on, they are misconceived. You know, there is a misconception and also negativity. So I think we have to overcome this, and it's only also when the people-to-people relationship is strengthened, when the other factors, economic relationship and others, will be cemented, I believe. So finally, I would like to express once again, my gratitude for being invited, and it is also my humble submission that the conference would look into these issues and also will deliberate, will give a very good input for the next summit. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador Zebai, for those thoughtful remarks. I think what you said about our relationship being one of mutual benefit of reciprocity and of equality means that we are talking more geoeconomics than geostrategy. And you did well also by stressing the need to build people-to-people partnership and to remind us that we really need to do more to learn about Africa. Thank you very much for those remarks. And now I have the pleasant duty to start with the launch of 3 books, and I'll be really guided by Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi.
Mr. Arora, for the first book on India-Africa partnership towards sustainable development from FIDC RIS. So the 2 editors of the volume.
Good morning to all of you. My fellow, my co-organizers, Sachin Chaturvedi, Mr. Berry, and Prasad, and Xavier, and Sabu from the Ministry of External Affairs, and of course, Ms. Mehta and Accenture. It's a great pleasure for us at Brookings to be partnering in this initiative. One of our three verticals is foreign policy. Another of our three verticals is development economics, and a third one is energy and sustainability. And when we look at issues that we want to work on, we try and find opportunities for straddling across all these three. And the India-Africa relationship actually gave us an opportunity to do exactly that. As you see in the book, we have 22 short essays. They're not really long, elaborate research pieces, more by way of getting conversations started on a variety of issues. But the nature of the relationship between India and Africa is clearly multidimensional. Both the Secretary and the Ambassador have highlighted the fact that we cannot look at this bilateral, and still not bilateral, it's 54 countries and 29 states, if you want to put it that way. Very complicated matrix of interests, of threats, of opportunities, and of options. In trying to crystallize, in trying to provide a relatively tractable framework for this relationship, it is really impossible to focus exclusively on one or the other dimension. So as we began to explore the possibility of research on the Indo-Africa relationship, it became very clear to us that focusing on either security or economics exclusively would not, or diplomacy or economics exclusively would not add very much value. And that is really the foundation of this book. It is forging a strategic partnership, and we believe that that partnership will emerge on a platform of four pillars. The first is the broader geopolitical context in which these two countries, stroke regions, are operating in. There are many common threats, and to the extent that these call for collaborative and coordinated efforts to deal with, to mitigate, to adapt to, that is one platform. So we have put a number of essays in the broad section of geopolitics. The second is the opportunity for coordinated action in the larger global public good debate, whether it is climate change or disease control or whatever it may be. And also the role of the current framework of multilateral institutions in facilitating development of these two regions. So global cooperation at the global level is something that perhaps provides a second pillar of the relationship between the two. We can see examples of this in different fora. The third is clearly the broad opportunity for trade and investment across these two regions. We have a number of prominent examples, and one of the things we've tried to do in this book is to bring in perspectives from people who are actually directly engaged in the act of doing business across borders, whether this is across the continent or focused on particular countries. And I think the challenges that both regions face is very clearly reflected in the emphasis on ease of doing business. This is something that the Indian government has put as a priority, just making it more attractive to do business within an existing policy framework. Policy is great, but implementation is a challenge. I think some of those issues are coming out from the African context as well. The fourth section we realized is a incredible variety of specific sectoral engagements. We, of course, hear a lot about the Kenyan experience with the financial inclusion, the M-Pesa experiment, and so on. Many African countries are starting to become role models for the integration between telecom and finance. Of course, we have a large Indian telecom operator also being a large African telecom operator, so we have contribution from that interest. There are examples of very, very important bilateral engagement in the form of railways, which has literally hit some sort of roadblocks or rail blocks, if I want to call them that. And I think this offers another opportunity to revive a very promising engagement that somehow, again, to use the railway metaphor, got derailed. Pharma is another example of low-cost drug development, providing great value and great utility to the African continent. So and energy, of course, energy is something that from our own perspective, as a massive importer of energy, and that situation is likely to continue in the foreseeable future, that the bilateral relationship between Africa and India is going to be an important contributor to India's energy security. So we brought these sectoral perspectives into play as well. So when we put this set of essays together, I think although I can't claim that it is complete, there are many issues that we haven't touched, particularly agriculture. I think it is to us reflective and does justice to the extreme complexity of the relationship and the opportunities that it provides. And on that basis, I'm particularly glad to be collaborating, because all of us, all of the institutions here, ourselves, RIS, IDSA, and CII, actually reflect these different interests. I think on occasions like this, in situations like this, the sum, the whole is, I think, significantly greater than the sum of the parts. So we're able to, in the build-up to the summit, which so many people have such high expectations from, able to hopefully create a common and coordinated intellectual and analytical platform on which these several sets of issues can be seen in their totality, each one can be seen in the larger context of all the others. And I think if we are to forge a strategic partnership, it can only happen in this coordinated and coherent fashion. So once again, let me thank our collaborators. Let me thank my team from Brookings. All of them contributed, but in particular Shruti Kodgole, who was sort of doing the heavy lifting for the production, the volume. And thank you all for participating. I do hope you stay through the day and engage in each of the sessions which focuses on a particular aspect of the relationship. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hokan. May I now request my colleague, Senior Research Associate, Ms. Ruchita Berry, to offer her vote of thanks.
African Diplomatic Corps to India, Mr. Ambassador Jayant Prasad, Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi, Dr. Hokan, Mr. Sahu, and Mr. Pranat Kumar. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to deliver the vote of thanks at the conclusion of this inaugural session of the conference, where we're going to discuss the India-Africa partnership, particularly the future directions of this partnership. So I'm really grateful to a number of people who have made this conference possible. First of all, I'd like to thank Mrs. Sujata Mehta, Secretary MEA, for taking time out of her busy schedule to make her special remarks. And her remarks have definitely set the tone for today's conference, where India's relations with African countries will be debated and analyzed. I would also like to thank Her Excellency, the Ambassador of Ethiopia, for her insightful keynote address, where she's called for multidimensional relationship between India and Africa, and has stressed on people-to-people contact between India and Africa. We'd also like to thank Mr. Sahu, Joint Secretary to the Ministry of External Affairs, for joining us for this occasion. At the same time, I'd like to note that this event would not have been possible without the encouragement of Ambassador Jayant Prasad, Director General of IDSA, Dr. Satya Chaturvedi, Director General RIS, Dr. Gokul, Director Research, Brookings India, and Mr. Pranav Kumar, Head International Trade and Policy, CII. I would like to thank the contributors of the book that we just released, the book which was published by the IDSA. This book talks about the common challenges of security that both India and Africa face, and also looks for common solutions for these challenges. So there are a number of contributors from Africa and India, and I would like to thank all those people who make this volume possible. Finally, I would like to thank the distinguished speakers, officials, diplomats, members of academia, industry, media persons who have braved the early morning traffic to be with us. Thanks a lot.